Hello, hello. We are back again for the afternoon session of day 23 of the Chad Daybell Doomsday Cult Murder Trial. Continuing testimony from
All right, thank you. Please be seated.
a law enforcement agent who is testifying to cell records of Alex Cox. Hello, Music City Mom.
Okay, we're back on the record on CR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. We just concluded the lunch recess. Jurors are back and properly seated. Investigator Wright, you're still on for your testimony. Going through a couple of those two things and still I was reviewing Exhibit 299. So if you'd like to continue with direct, you may.
Thank you, Your Honor. And may I publish States Exhibit 299 again?
You may.
Welcome back, everyone. Please remember to hit the thumbs up. Thank you very much.
And Investigator Wright, I think we'd left off talking about gun range data that you looked at or location data associated with Alex Cox's device in relation to gun ranges. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And we'd been talking about specifically the month of September. Did you also look at location data associated with that device for the month of October?
Yes, I did.
And what did you discover in relation to that device and shooting ranges in the month of October?
I determined that the device also went to gun ranges in October on multiple occasions.
And can you tell us what we're seeing on this slide?
Yes, one of those dates that it went to gun ranges was October 7th of 2019. And on that particular date, it actually went to a gun range on 4 occasions. The first gun range it went to that day was the Fremont County Sportsman's Club public shooting range. That's located in St. Anthony, Idaho. And that's approximately 15 miles northeast of Rexburg. It went to that location, but didn't seem to stay for any significant duration. It basically drove there and left immediately. It then returned to 565 Pioneer Road, number 107, and was there from 1309, really one data point until 1309. It then left and returned to a different gun and went to a different gun range, the Unified Sportsman's Gun Club in Rexburg, and was there from 1325 to 1329, a fairly short period of time. And then it left again and went to the Fremont County Sportsman's Club public shooting range again, and was there from 1350 to 1416. It then left there and returned back to 565 Pioneer Road, Unit 107, and was there from 1437 to 1443. And then returned back to the Fremont County Sportsman's Club public shooting range, where it was from approximately 1503 to 1524. On October 8th, it also visited 2 gun ranges, the Unified Sportsman's Club Gun Club in Rexburg. And again, it went from 1028 to 1029, and it was a very short duration. It left there and
Sparkles.
and later went to the Fremont County Sportsman's Club public shooting range, where it was from 1107 to 1229. On that particular instance, when it was at the Fremont County Sportsman's Club public shooting range, there was sufficient data to indicate that it seemed to be near a 100-yard range is where the data was.
And in relation to the investigation, was there something that happened on October 9th of 2019?
Yes, there was.
What was that?
There was an incident at the Chad and Tammy Daybell residence regarding Tammy Daybell.
And do you know what was reported to have occurred?
That in the evening of October 9th, 2019, she was in her driveway unloading her car when an unknown individual wearing a mask had pointed a weapon or paintball gun or something similar at her, and then had left the area. Uh,
In relation to the location data, did you look at additional dates in October?
yes, I did.
And with regard to the shooting ranges, what else did you learn?
That the device continued to go to gun ranges in October. It went there on October 12th, 2019, and it went to the Fremont County Sportsman's Club Public Shooting Range from 1457 to 1701. And that's in St. Anthony, Idaho. And at that time, it seemed to be near a 50-yard range. And then the following day, it also returned to that same gun range at the Fremont County Sportsman's Club Public Shooting Range, and was there from 1249 to 1440. And the device appeared to be near what would be considered both a rifle and another range, which was a pistol range. There was some data at both sites.
And to be clear, Tammy Daybell did not end up being shot on October 9th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And this is just several days after that.
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing on this slide?
Yes. So on another occasion, another date, the device did go to shooting ranges, and that was on October 15th, 2019. And it went to the Fremont County Sportsman's Club Public Shooting Range twice on that date. It went in the morning from 8:01 to 9:20, and it appeared to be near a 50-yard range on that occasion. It left there and went to Walmart in Rexburg from 9:34 to 10:15, and then went to Alex's address at 565 Pioneer Road, number 107, from 10:24 to 12:16, and then went to Unit 175, Lori Vallow's residence, from 12:17 to 13:17, and then back to Unit 107 from 13:19 to 13:27.
Good to know, Chopper.
It then left there and went to the residence of Chad Daybell, 202 North, 1900 East in Rexburg, from 1341 to 1356. After that, it went back to 565 Pioneer Road to the Unit 175, and was there from 1454 to 1515, and then went to Unit 107 in that same complex from 1517 to 1601. It then left there and went to the Fremont County Sportsman's Club Public Shooting Range again that day from 1623 to 1817. And it appeared to be either at this 50-yard range or 100-yard range in that area.
And again, on this slide, we see the device leave from the apartment associated with Alex Cox and go to the residence associated with Chad Daybell. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then leave from the residence associated with Chad Daybell and go to the residence associated with Lori Vallow.
Yes.
We talked about the shooting or attempted shooting on October 9th. Did you end up looking at some additional information related to that particular day?
I did.
And can you tell us what we're seeing on this slide?
Yes, this is an image from that file I was reviewing, and it's an overhead map of the Sportsman's Warehouse at 2909 South 25th East in Ammon, Idaho. And this includes data points for October 9th, 2019.
And to back up a little bit, was part of the reason why you were looking at the gun range data in relation to this event that happened on October 9th?
Yes, it was.
With regard to the Sportsman's Warehouse, can you tell us with the cluster of data points what those are showing?
Yes, so I went there on March 9th, 2020. This was actually before I started my own review of this particular data. This was when Nick Balance was reviewing the data, and he had provided this information to me about a visit there by Alex Cox, and this same information we're looking at now. So I went to that location to see if I could conduct some follow-up investigation. The data points showed that the device was there in the vicinity of the Sportsman's Warehouse from 1534 to 1612. Some of the initial data points are up in this upper left corner on the outside of on the back part of the parking lot. And of course, there's other businesses in that same area. So I couldn't necessarily say it was at what business it was at based on those data points. These data points here on this map are all Wi-Fi data points, and the range, the margin of error or the radius of them was between 15 and 87 meters, depending on the point. And but then I observed these additional data points that are within this building here, which is the Sportsman's Warehouse itself. And for a period of time, the device seemed to be closely associated with that location.
Based on that information, did you do any additional follow-up?
Yes, on March 9th, 2019, I went to that location and spoke with employees of Sportsman's Warehouse and attempted to do some additional investigation.
Did you end up requesting receipts for a specific period of time?
Yes, I obtained receipts from for a period of time that overlapped this time period that the device seemed to be at the store. So I actually asked for receipts from 1530 to 1615 for a 45-minute period. And they provided me every transaction that they had during that time period. It was almost 60 transactions, I believe.
Did you review those transaction receipts?
I did. I actually reviewed them before I left the area, and then made additional inquiries into a particular receipt that I observed.
With those receipts, did some of them have a payment form of a credit or debit card?
Yes, they did.
Were any of those associated with Alex Cox?
No, they weren't.
And you talked about a particular receipt that caught your attention. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, there was one receipt for a cash transaction, uh, and the checkout time for the receipt was 4:11 p.m., so just a minute or so before the device left the area. And it was for 5 items. And the receipt is a little difficult to read, but the 5 items are listed here on the right. And this is how they're listed on the receipt. One was something called M's Woodland Cam. Another one was Kenai Flip Mitt. One was Thermo 3-hole FA. Another item was a Bullfrog Rain, and then a 20-ounce Dr. Pepper. The receipt has some specific information regarding these particular items.
Welcome back,
And
Doxy.
uh, these numbers here to the left of the names are something called a stock keeping unit number. I've heard it referred to as a SKU or SKU. The stock keeping unit number is an inventory control number that was unique to Sportsman's Warehouse. It would identify that specific item in their inventory control system. There's another number underneath these that's marked UPC, and that's the Universal Product Code. And my understanding is that's a unique identifier given to a product by the manufacturer. There was one particular item on this list that caught my attention, and because of that, I wanted to do additional follow-up on it.
And what item was that?
The Bullfrog Rain. I recognize that name as an item that I was aware was in the possession of the property management company that had cleaned out Lori Vallow's unit where many of Alex Cox's belongings had ended up after vacating 107.
Was that the same property company that had turned over the cell phone we talked about previously?
Yes,
How had you learned about those pants?
from another investigator, Detective Ray Hermosillo.
Did you end up personally observing that item?
At a later date, I did. Yes,
And this was also a cash transaction,
yes, it was.
and it was done during the time the data location placed a device associated with Alex Cox in Sportsman's Warehouse.
Yes.
Did you do anything additional in relation to the SKUs or UPCs?
Yes, I requested additional information on site from Sportsman's Warehouse regarding these particular items and what they might be and whether they had any of these items in stock that I could look at. They were able to show me in the store the items that were still in stock. I particularly focused on the top four and not so much the, the soft drink, but of the first four items, the uh, the woodland cam item was a woodland camo beanie, but it was not in stock and I wasn't able to view it. I was able to view the exact item or similar item for the other three.
And in relation to these items, did you also look for them on the Sportsman's Warehouse website?
Yes, obviously the Sportsman's Warehouse sold many of their products online and you could search those products by name, but also by the SKU and that stock keeping unit number, and you could look at their inventory there. So at a later time, I did look at that as well, just to make sure the items that I had observed in store using that SKU were also the same item, or see if there was additional information regarding them online.
Were you ever able to retrieve an image of the woodland camo beanie?
No, I was not.
Were you able to retrieve images of the other three items?
Yes.
What are we seeing in this slide?
Yes, so that item that had been listed on the receipt as a Kanai flip mitt this is the item. It's a Glacier Glove Alaska River flip mitt. Now the SKU is size specific and so the one that was purchased according to their inventory system was a large. They did not have a large in stock, but they did have a small of that. And that is me holding that there in the store. And I took photographs of that item. It's a set of gloves. It's a glove that is a fingerless glove, but also has a mitten portion that can cover the gloves and keep them warm when you don't need manual dexterity with your fingers. But then that can be peeled back to expose the fingers to do tasks that might require additional dexterity. And the SKU on this is very similar to the large. I think it was maybe off one digit, but the employee helped me determine that was the item. And I later searched it online and confirmed that the item on the receipt was a Glacier Glove Alaska River flip mitt large size.
And these would have been purchased in the month of October.
Yes,
And are you familiar with the Eastern Idaho area?
yes.
Do Octobers tend to be temperature-wise? Do you know how they tend to be?
Judge, I'm gonna object at this time. It's reaching into speculation.
Sustained.
May I respond?
I think it's just too broad of a question, Ms. Blake, so it's sustained.
What type of tasks are these gloves used for? Or can they be used for?
No, anytime somebody needed to keep their hands warm, but at times were doing tasks that require to use their fingers, something maybe manipulating a cell phone or other tasks like maybe like tying a fishing knot or shooting a firearm.
And what are we seeing in this slide?
So another item on that receipt was this thermo 3-hole FA. That turned out to be a ski mask. Uh, the uh, the actual product is an Igloo's 3-hole ski mask. They did have one in stock. There was only one size, one color with that SKU. And this is the item on the right in store that I took a picture of. An employee helped me use a handheld scanner they had to scan that item and compare the SKU with the SKU on the receipt, and it was the same. I later went to the Sportsman's Warehouse website and put in that SKU, and they had a photo of the product, and that is on the left. That was what was on their website for the same product.
And again, in relation to the incident involving Tammy Daybell on October 9th, I think you previously indicated, or do you know if the individual that approached her was described to be wearing a mask?
Yes, he was.
And what are we seeing in this image?
So the item that was listed on the receipt as a bullfrog rain was this item. It was a Frog Tog brand, and the bullfrog is the model number or the model name. Bullfrog rain pant. It was a large. It was a large size according to the SKU. They actually had this item in stock at the store with the same SKU, and it was also a large size. And that photo on the right is a photo that I took of that item in store of what this product looked like. I also took a photo of on the left of the tag with the UPC, which also corresponded to the item that that was on the receipt.
And in addition to that, there's an indication of a Homer J. Maximus search. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, the Homer J. Maximus at gmail.com was the Gmail account associated with Alex Cox's device that I was reviewing. Google, that maintains that Gmail account, maintains a lot of information regarding the use of that Gmail account. And part of the records that we received through the warrants were searches conducted by the Homer J. Maximus account using Google. And one of the searches that was conducted by the Homer J. Maximus account on October 9th, 2019 was Frog Tog sizing for pants.
And do the pants we're seeing here, are they similar or the same as the pants that the company had turned over, the rental company?
Yes, I later went to the Rexburg Police Department and observed the pants from the property management company and compared them, and they were the same pants. They were Frog Tog brand Bullfrog rain pants. They were also size large. And the pants from the property management company still had the Sportsman's Warehouse tag on them. So I was able to observe that as well. And that had the same UPC on the tag.
Did you look at additional location data linked to that device for October 9th?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us what we're seeing in this slide?
So when the device left the Sportsman's Warehouse on October 9th at approximately 1612, it drove north to Highway 20. It drove to Rexburg, but then bypassed the exit that would have normally gone to Alex Cox's residence. It continued north and got off at Salem Road, and then it drove to the vicinity of Chad Daybell's residence at 202 North, 1900 East.
And Again, who did Alex Cox know at the Daybell residence?
Chad Daybell.
After being at the Daybell residence, were you able to determine
Yeah,
where?
I'm going to object. That's mischaracterization of evidence.
You want to respond to that, Ms. Blake?
I can just re-ask a different question.
Okay, thank you.
Let me restate that. And actually, I want to back up. There's an indication of one particular GPS point. Can you tell us why that's noted in there?
So yes, the the device did not seem to stop at the Daybell residence on that occasion. The device arrives in the vicinity of the Daybell residence at 1650. It then turns eastbound on 200 North. It drives approximately 2 miles to Highway 20. It turns around and then drives back by the Daybell residence, approximately 1703, and then goes back southbound on Salem Road. So there didn't appear to be a stop of any significant duration at the Daybell residence, although the device seemed to go by the Daybell residence twice. At 1651, there's a location on the first pass by the residence where there's a location by a canal where we get a data point, and that there's a parking pole out near that spot. After leaving that area, the device then returns to 565 Pioneer Road, 107, arrives there about 7:16. That device then stays there the rest of the night. The last data point on the 9th is at 23:53, and the first data point on October 10th is at 00:03, and it continues to stay in that unit until 11:28 that morning of the 10th.
And moving to the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here?
Yes, this is an image from the software that or the file I was reviewing. This shows those data points that I was referring to. And so in this lower left corner is Salem Road. And that's this yellow line running north and south. This yellow pin in the corner there of that intersection is the Daybell residence. And this road here is 200 North, and this is Highway 20. So as it's coming from, it had been at the Sportsman's Warehouse. It had progressed to this point by 1649 and was driving north or traveling north at driving speed on Salem Road. Here's a data point at 1650. And then there's another one there at 1651 and another one at 1652. The device then travels to Highway 20, and just past Highway 20, it actually turns around here. Here's the turnaround.
Thank you,
Reverse
Rachel.
course. The final data points are one here at 1701, and then another one in that area at 1703, as the device travels south out of the area and returns to Alex Cox residence.
And can you tell us what we're seeing on this slide?
So this is a zoomed in image of that same location. The yellow road here on the left is Salem Road or 1900 East. This road is 200 North, and then the yellow pin marks the Daybell residence. And this just shows those two data points at 1651 and 1652 that are by this irrigation canal, which runs under 200 North. The first data point is a GPS data point, and although the next one appears in the same spot, it's a cellular data point with a wider margin of error. So the device could have still been moving at that location. That road, I have been to that location. It is, that road is fairly narrow. there aren't a lot of locations for anyone to have parked a vehicle. And except for at that right here, there is a spot where there's a pull off where a vehicle could park. And I believe there's some controls for the irrigation canal there. And there's also a gate into this pasture near that location. That this location to the northwest corner of the Daybell residence, I believe near the corner of the garage, is approximately 625 yards.
And talking about that road being narrow and the pull out there, is there anywhere else along that road outside of private driveways where a vehicle could pull out?
Really, not that I observed. So the road doesn't have much of a shoulder. It slopes off fairly steeply into ditches. If a vehicle parked along the road, along here, it would be tough to get the vehicle fully out of traffic. Nearby roads, the next one to the east is 2100 East, which is a mile from 1900 East, is my understanding. And then if you travel, say, by foot through the pasture, you run into another canal approximately a mile north as well. So there are a few locations where anyone could park a vehicle except that pull out. But I don't know that he stopped there other than he did drive by that location.
And we talked about the device associated with Alex Cox after being in the vicinity of the Daybell residence, returning to the apartment associated with Alex Cox. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recall also talking about looking into some additional devices that were purchased from Walmart?
Yes, I do.
And was one of those devices actually purchased on October 8th?
Yes, that one I pulled that receipt for was purchased on October 8th.
And again, the device or a device associated with Alex Cox was at the Walmart at that same time.
Yes.
And what are we seeing on this slide?
So that it indicates that that device that was purchased at the Walmart was purchased with a cash transaction at the same time that Alex Cox was at the Walmart. That device, which was a track phone, was not activated till the following day for the first time. It was activated on October 9th, 2019 at 1:20 p.m. I've reviewed the transactional records or the call detail records for that particular device. And there are 10 messages with that device on October 9th, 2019 between another device attributed to Chad Daybell. That is between the period of 17:30 to 10:30 p.m. Now, these transactional records were all text messages. There were some attempts to make calls between the two devices, but none of the calls had been completed. So it appears that it was just these 10 text messages between those two devices during that period of time.
And when you talk about the transactional data, were you able to recover the content of those messages?
No, there's no text message content that was retained by the carrier at that particular time.
And would these messages have been around the time of the incident involving Tammy Daybell?
Yes, it would have. That incident happened in between that time.
Were you able to recover any location data associated with that new device?
No, it turned out because it was text messages, the carrier did not retain cellular data for that. And likewise, we were not able to get any other data such as GPS or Wi-Fi information. So we had no location information for those devices. And so we don't know where those devices were when these transactions were taking place.
As part of your investigation, did you look at additional days or focus on additional days in October?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell us what we're seeing in this slide?
Yes. So the device I was reviewing for Alex Cox, his primary device, it takes a trip out of Rexburg on October 16th, 2019. It is last in Rexburg on the 16th at 13:39, and it had been at 565 Pioneer Road, number 175, between 13:07 and 13:39. It then leaves that location and begins to travel south from Rexburg and eventually onto I-15 through Utah. And by 22:29 that night, it arrives at the Comfort Inn and Suites Zion Park area in Hurricane, Utah. The device appears to stay there overnight. So the last data point there was at 23:55, and we on the 16th, and then on the 17th, we started. The next data point was 00:05, and it stayed there at the Comfort Inn and Suites until 11:11. It then continues traveling at driving speed to Las Vegas, Nevada, and arrives at McCarran International Airport at 13:56. McCarran is now Harry Reid International Airport. It's there from 13:56 to 14:10, and then the device reverses course and travels back to Rexburg without an overnight visit. There were other stops in this trip that not reflected here of gas and restaurants, but just along the routes. It doesn't return to Rexburg until the early hours of October 18th, where it arrives at 1:48 at 565 Pioneer Road, number 175. It stays there till 1:55 and then is next in Unit 107 from 1:57 until 9:48 that morning. At 9:49, the device is then in 565 Pioneer Road, number 175, where it remains till 12:37.
Did that trip to Las Vegas end up having any significance or link to the investigation?
Yes,
And what was that?
Lori Vallow took a flight from McCarran International Airport and eventually went to Hawaii.
Did October 18th have significance in this investigation?
Yes, it did.
And why was that?
The night of October 18th into the 19th, Tammy Daybell died.
Did you look at additional location data for that device for October 18th?
Yes, I did. So after that device left Unit 175 just after noon on the 18th, it traveled to the Idaho Falls, Ammon area, and it went to some businesses there. And the final business it went to was a Chick-fil-A at 3003 South 25th East in Ammon, Idaho. It arrived there at approximately 19:58 and stayed there till 21:32.
And on that Chick-fil-A, do you recall looking at some photos of Tylee's Jeep and some of the contents?
Yes, I do.
Does that data point, or do those data points correspond with that receipt?
Yes, it does. There was a receipt in that Jeep from that Chick-fil-A for 8:05 p.m. or 20:05. So during the time period Alex's device is at the Chick-fil-A, there was a receipt for the Jeep that fell within that time period for some food and a beverage.
What did you observe next in relation to those data points?
Yes, at approximately 21:32, the device leaves the Chick-fil-A and travels northbound to an area south of the Daybell residence. This map on the right is an image from the file I was reviewing that shows data points as it moved from the Chick-fil-A in Ammon and as it starts to pass Rexburg. So the first, I'm sorry, it passes Rexburg and we have data points here at 22:05 and 22:07 is then here at a location at the intersection of Salem Road and Salem Church Road. Now, at that location on the southeast corner of that intersection is a chapel for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the device then remains at that location for about 38 minutes based on the data I observed. During that 38 minutes, there are 16 data points. They're a combination of GPS and Wi-Fi, and they vary between 11 meters and 122 meters in radius. Then there's a period of time data where there is no data. From 22:45 until 23:53, there's no data whatsoever, no location data. And when we get location data again, it is south of where it had previously been. It is here on Highway 20, just west of Rexburg. That is a Wi-Fi data point with a 110-meter radius. After that data point, we continue to get more data points as that device continues to travel south and goes to Idaho Falls. I noted that this data point here is approximately a 7-minute drive from here. So I don't know where this device was when we had no data, but for some reason, if it had been here, it would have taken 7 minutes to get here before we started getting data again.
And you talked about the device then heading to the Idaho Falls area.
Yes,
Did it remain there for the duration of the night?
it did. It went to a hotel.
Are you aware if Alex Cox still had an apartment in Rexburg during that time?
Yes, he was still using Unit 107 and used it after this particular date as well.
And can you tell us what we're seeing in this slide?
So this is a portion of that image that we were just looking at. That shows the intersection at Salem Road and Salem Church Road. The church I was referring to is here on this southeast corner. The Daybell residence is marked with this yellow pin here. The distance between these two locations, I believe, is about 2.6 miles. From the data that I reviewed, I did not see any data that had the device going any closer to the residence, the Daybell residence, than this location.
And what are we seeing in this slide?
So this is an image of the church at that intersection, 3462 North Salem Road. The data points that we got, those 16 between 22:07 and 22:45 are marked here. There's a cluster of data points here, which I believe were the GPS ones. And then we had some Wi-Fi ones were here with a wider margin of error than these ones on the left. So for roughly that 38-minute period, we got those 16 data points. And then after that, we had nothing for an hour and 8 minutes before receiving the next data point south near Rexburg.
And when we see those data points that appear to be over that residence, is the radius large enough that it would cover a vehicle in the church parking lot?
Yes.
Through the investigation, did you learn of anyone else Alex Cox knew in the vicinity other than Chad Daybell?
No. And that was also the only time I ever saw him go to that location in the 2-month period that I reviewed.
And can you go over what this slide is telling us?
Much of this I've covered already, but this is just indicating the time period from 2207 to 2245 when we received data, and then from 2245 to 2353 there was a gap in data, location data, and then at 2353 on US Highway 20 is the first time data starts coming in again, and then it comes in regularly after that. And that distance from the church to where we got that first data point is a 7-minute drive. So if it had driven from the church to that point, it would have left the church about 2346.
Investigator Wright, do you know when Tammy Daybell was reported deceased?
The morning of October 19th, 2019.
So the morning after this information.
Yes,
And you indicated that you looked at location data associated with this device for the month of October.
yes,
Does this slide depict the dates in October when the device was somewhere either at the Daybell residence or in the vicinity?
yes. I observed it go to in the vicinity or to the Daybell residence 3 times that month. On October 9th, as I previously described, it didn't seem to stop at the Daybell residence, but did drive by the Daybell residence from 1650 to 1703 and made one pass by and another one back by. And then on October 15th, 2019, it went there from 1341 to 1356. And on this occasion, it did seem to stay at the residence, and those data points were near the front of the residence. There were no data points near the rear part of the residence. And then on October 18th, it approached a location somewhat closer to the Daybell residence, though it didn't seem to go to the Daybell residence by the data that I observed. It went to that church 2.6 miles south of the Daybell residence and stayed there for a period of time.
And on 2 of those 3 dates, there was something reported that had occurred in regards to Tammy Daybell. Is that correct?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
All right. Mr. Pryor, once you're ready, you can conduct
Thank
your
you, Judge.
cross-examination.
All right, Pryor, what do you got? What do you got? World's best critical thinker.
And Judge, could I have Exhibit 7, Exhibit 34, and I believe 299 from the state? Those are defense, and then the states would be 299.
All right, 299 was the one we were just referring to. We'll get 7
Also may
and
have
34
299,
for you.
sure. Okay. And Judge, could I inquire, the state provided me paper copies of 299 for ease of purpose and fluidity. I'd like to use these through the Elmo device. if that's acceptable to the court for having the witness address each particular slide. Otherwise, we may have some delay in going through each of the slides with the officer.
The actual exhibit 299 is the electronic program. It's represented by the print off in the courtesy copy, which as I went through mirrors the same information, essentially printed version of that electronic summary exhibit. I wouldn't have any objection of having it published on the Elmo. Does the state have any concern about that?
No, Your Honor, they are identical. The state has no objection.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake. If you'll give me a moment on these other two exhibits, we'll make sure we have those for you, Mr. Pryor.
And to clarify, were those defense exhibits?
I think he said defense exhibits 7 and 34.
Yes, Judge, I believe that's it.
Thank you.
That's a good one, Chopper. Yeah, I was rather underwhelmed by Brian Koberger's alibis. First, he was, bye, Doxy. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
And I hope your child has a pleasant dentist visit and gets something like a toy or something afterwards, so they don't not like the dentist. Anyway,
Judge, what?
the
I'm
start
ready, Judge.
Okay, once you're ready, go ahead and let us know if you're going to publish any of those exhibits.
Not quite yet. I've just got some preliminary questions for the,
I don't think
may I call you Mr. Wright or what's your? preference?
Yes, that's fine. Thank
Mr.
you.
Wright's
I'm
accept-
just going to silence this for a second to say I've never heard a weaker alibi than I was driving around and stargazing in the middle of the night, exactly when these children were murdered.
Is that right?
Yes,
And who was present with you at that search? Do you recall?
there were numerous officers at that location. That was at the Daybell residence when the Fremont County Sheriff's Office executed a warrant there. The FBI's evidence response team, they were the primary individuals documenting the search and handling and supervising the search. No other investigators were assisting in searching various rooms for items that were on the list of items that could be seized.
And you were present for that search
Good
as
to
well?
see you, Adrian.
Yes, I was.
Hello.
Were you advised of all of the findings and the evidence, if any, that was obtained or information that was obtained as part of that search?
Yes, the evidence response team did they did a report on their findings, though the evidence, I believe, went to the Fremont County Sheriff's Office, seized the actual evidence, but there was a report that was produced that I had a chance to review.
And then in addition, was it at that time that there were use of some dogs to search the property as well on that date?
I don't believe there were, I'm sorry, you're talking about January 3rd? Yeah, I don't believe there were any dogs present on that date.
Were you present at any time when there were use of dogs on the property?
Yes, I was
When was that?
on June 9th, 2020.
Now, as far as the search of the apartments of Alex Cox and Lori Vallow at 575 Pioneer, were you present for those searches as well?
I was not.
And the information that you're obtaining was from Officer Ray Hermosillo?
Oh, which piece of information?
Well, just
sorry.
the frog tog suit, the mask and that information.
Yes, the information I obtained regarding Frog Talk purchase, I did that at Sportsman's Warehouse. And then the item that was seized by the Rexburg Police Department, I wasn't there when it was seized, but I later went there and observed observed that in their custody by the Rexburg Police Department and made that comparison.
Okay, so
Exactly.
your information was Officer Hermosillo, who was in charge of the search of the apartment and the garage at 107 and 175 Pioneer Road.
So there was more than one search at those addresses. So when I was first notified about the missing child, JJ, that was on November 27th, 2019. And the Rexburg Police Department, as my understanding, had been to that site the previous day to do the welfare check and had returned on the 27th to do a search. So at that search, there were no federal officers involved in that search. They were calling us to tell us their findings that they'd gotten into the apartments and hadn't found the children. So my understanding is they seized items of evidence on that occasion.
And then that occasion was the 27th of November.
I believe so.
And your contact person who would have the information relating to the items that were seized as a result of that search, would that be Officer Hermosillo?
Yes, I understand he was the lead detective on the case. I spoke with him multiple occasions, and his supervisor was Lieutenant Ron Ball. They had another detective that assisted with the case, but he also seemed to be the primary evidence person, and that was Randy Reese, I believe. That often when questions of evidence came up, Randy seemed to be the person in the know about that.
But the lead detective and the one who would be apprised of all of the information would have been Officer Hermosillo.
Yes.
Okay. Now you spoke a little bit about the September 8th visit to Yellowstone.
Yes.
And it appears that they left just before 12 o'clock on the 8th.
Yes, that's when they left Rexburg.
And then at what point did you find that they were back in Rexburg?
I believe they got to the 565 Pioneer Road at 2037 that evening. And that was unit 175 is where I first started seeing data there in Rexburg after the Yellowstone trip.
And at that point, the exit video leaving Yellowstone only determined that there was a license plate that left. There was no indication of any passengers or the condition of any passengers in the car. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair.
And again, if I could put this up, Judge Anelmo.
Please remember to hit the thumbs up. Thank you very much.
Judge.
We can publish that. Yeah.
Jinx, Adrian, thank you.
And again, this shows the Yellowstone travels. Is that correct?
Yes, it shows the travels after they were at Old Faithful. So Old Faithful's up in that upper left corner.
And if
So-
you could get the marker and show me that, I'd appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. It's almost off the
This is
Right here.
a challenge for me.
And yeah, Mr. Pryor, I know it's difficult with the situation, but you'll need to talk into the microphone when you make those comments as well.
Does that help?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, if you could just show me where the Old Faithful is on that.
Yes, this is the Old Faithful Geyser area and the lodge area. So this particular map shows the travels after leaving Old Faithful as they went deeper into the park. And then, which was this route.
And I'll stop you there for a minute. As you're going deeper in the park, what time of day is that?
So that last location at Old Faithful was at 1627. I think you can just make out one of the data points there. That was the last time it seemed to be around the parking lot at Old Faithful. So at 4:27 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
And then the final point at the turnaround spot was 5:12 p.m. So 50 minutes later or so, or no,
49, 50
a little,
minutes
yeah,
later.
yeah, 45. So what is that, 45 minutes later?
And having been a young man when I was at Yellowstone, I don't want to tell you how many years ago that was. I don't want to tell you how many years ago that was. Is there anything of significance at the end of the before the turnaround during that route?
No, there didn't seem to be anything there of significance, a lookout or something that would attract people. It appeared that it really made a turnaround in the middle of the road, at least from what I observed. There didn't seem to be anything in there to look at. And as I mentioned, the data was frequent and precise, and it really, if it made a stop there, at least according to the data, it couldn't have been more than a minute or two because it was already within a minute heading back north again.
So it appeared that it was some sort of a driving trip.
At least that portion was. There were I only observed 2 stops from the time it left the Maverick in Rexburg. That was at Old Faithful, and then at the Buckaroo Bill's barbecue on the exit from the park after they went out of the park after this in West Yellowstone, Montana. There was a stop there, and then they drove back to Rexburg. So it was a long drive with 2 stops, as best I could tell.
But again, as far as the purpose, there's no way to determine whether they were sightseeing or whether or not they were just driving down this road with no purpose. Would that be fair?
Yes,
And then at some point during this trip, they turn around and head back towards the exit, correct?
yes. They reverse course drive back, and this time they do not stop at Old Faithful. They just continue past it, and then they would have continued to the west, and then the road turns north before it goes west again out the west entrance of Yellowstone National Park.
And based on your assessment, can you say with reasonable certainty that at no time they stopped during that, between the points, at no time they stopped for any length of time?
I can't say that. I can only say that it appeared, based on the data points that I had, that it seemed to move at driving speed. And when because there are gaps in data, but between the gaps in data, it seemed to cover those gaps in what would be consistent with driving speed. I don't know if I can see an example on there, but
Well, I don't need an example. What I wanted to clarify is that you can't say to a certainty that at no time during that trip there was a stop of any kind. Is that correct?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
no,
Okay,
I
thank
cannot.
you.
I would expect it had some short stops of some kind.
Well, I really didn't ask a question there, but you
I'm
can't.
sorry.
That's okay. You really can't say that the length of any of these stops that potentially could have taken place during the trip down this why they traveled down this road. Is that right?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Sustained.
You can't say to a certainty that they were short trips where they stopped, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, misstates the testimony asked and answered.
Sustained.
Without me asking you a question, you made reference to the fact that
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative. There was a question.
Well, overruled. There was a unsolicited comment by the witness at one point. So if that's where the question is, I'll allow it.
and the unsolicited comment referenced something about short. Is that right?
Yes, I was trying to clarify my previous answer.
Now we're looking at this exhibit and it starts with them being at some place or close to, right? Buckaroo Bill's barbecue.
Yes, the device is just outside that location in West Yellowstone, Montana.
And then back to Pioneer Road at about 2037, with my math is about 837. Is that right?
Yes,
And then appears a trip to a Maverick in Rexburg, correct?
yes,
Back to Pioneer Road 175,
correct.
and that's on September 8th, correct?
Yes,
And that was for approximately 31 minutes at 175 from 22 44 to 23:15?
Yes, what is that, 31 minutes? Yes.
And then back to at 23:44.
Is, go ahead and answer,
No, you go
ask
ahead.
your question. At
I'm,
23:44 is when I get data consistent with it being in unit 107.
okay. And that's one of the questions I had is I see a gap between 23:15 and 23:44, unless I'm reading that incorrectly.
No, you do see a gap, and that's because that was fairly common, actually. There would be gaps in data, sometimes a few minutes, sometimes it could be an hour or more. And sometimes there is data between these points, but the data isn't precise enough for me to draw any kind of conclusion exactly where it is. The margin of error could be, say, hundreds of meters, and that's greater than the distance between those two locations. And so I really couldn't say where it was at that particular moment.
And that's, I guess that's where I guess, leading, for lack of a better word. Your analysis from 22:44 to 23:15, your range is 100 meters. Is that correct?
It was about 80 meters between the two locations.
Okay, but the scope of what you looked at in terms of the points, the data points,
Yes.
what is your range in terms of how far out you looked on in terms of making this evaluation?
So the data points, each data point had a margin of error given with it, and that came from the carrier or from Google. They were the ones that determined how precise the estimate of these locations was, and that's really what they were. They were estimates based on their technical capability. And so the most precise types of data points were GPS, and then we had also Wi-Fi and cellular data. So these three types of data points were mixed in what I was looking at. They were all clumped together, if you will. And so I had to review each data point to see how much they could be relied upon. Uh, if in this instance where I gave a range, there were multiple data points between that range that were most closely identified with that particular location. And the margin of error on them was less than the distance between those two locations. So it was consistent with me drawing a conclusion about where it appeared to be.
Okay, so, and maybe I wasn't particularly clear. When I'm talking about the range
Are you ever?
for these
I'm kidding.
devices, it's possible that at 23:15, Alex Cox traveled somewhere else or into a different location outside of the range that you were using to determine location. Would that be fair?
No, well, partially. If there was a data point, if he traveled and I had any data point while he traveled, that with any level of precision, I would have been able to see that he moved. But if he moved between those data points and we had no precise data, I wouldn't have known that. So it's possible he could move between one location and another and go somewhere else for that. The gap between those 2 points is 29 minutes. So he could move and we didn't get data for that.
Right.
And that's very possible.
And that's what I'm suggesting is that it's possible at 23:15, he went down to halfway down to Idaho Falls and then turned around and decided to come back.
Objection, Your Honor. I think council's adding testimony. I'd object.
I'll sustain, or I'm sorry, I'm going to overrule that objection based on the question. It's a proper leading question. You could take.
In other words, he could have gone out of the area and you wouldn't necessarily have seen that data point and then came back to apartment 107 at 23:44. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
If there was no data to show his movement at all, I wouldn't have been able to see that.
I skipped one, Judge. I'm sorry.
All right, in the next little bit here, Mr. Pryor, we need to take an afternoon break. I don't know when a good stopping point is. So,
Now?
okay,
Anybody now? Now, Judge.
all right. We'll go ahead and take the mid-afternoon recess, 25 minutes or so. So about 20 to 3, plan on coming back on for additional evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
All rise.
That was kind of funny. Pryor showed his hand a little bit right there. Let's watch that again.
And 2344, unless I'm reading that incorrectly.
Watch this.
No, you do see a gap, and that's because that was fairly common, actually. There would be gaps in data, sometimes a few minutes, sometimes it could be an hour or more. And sometimes there is data between these points, but the data isn't precise enough for me to draw any kind of conclusion exactly where it is. The margin of error could be, say, hundreds of meters, and that's greater than the distance between those two locations. And so I really couldn't say where it was at that particular moment.
And that's a better word from look pointing this evaluation.
And that's the base point and what I was looking at in locations.
Cases. Cox traveled somewhere to determine location.
Partially. If there was a data, but if there and goes somewhere else,
And that's what I'm suggesting is that it's possible at 2315, he went halfway down to Idaho Falls and then turned around and decided to come back.
Objection, Your Honor. I think counsel's adding testimony. I'd object.
I'll sustain, or I'm sorry, I'm going to overrule that objection based on the question. It's a proper leading question. You could take.
In other words, he could have gone out of the area and you wouldn't necessarily have seen that data point and then came back to apartment 107 at 2344. Is that correct?
yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
If there was no.
I'll take an afternoon break. I don't know when a good stopping point is. So,
Now?
okay.
Anybody now?
Right there. He's like, I don't know if this is an appropriate stopping point. And Pryor's like, oh, now? He's like, because he's panicking. He doesn't know where to go next. I just thought, I thought that was a little bit funny. So we were talking a little earlier about this kind of blooper that happened in the Karen Reed trial earlier, where, you know, the judge and the defense attorney got into a little bit of a back and forth where the trial attorney, the defense attorney kept saying, you know, louder and louder and louder at the witness. Of course, of course. Here, I'll just show it to you. You can see it for yourself. It's silly.
Know the name of the beach.
Where was it?
I believe somewhere in the Cape.
And Katie McLaughlin is in that photo, correct?
Yes, along with a bunch of other friends.
Of course, there are other friends, but you.
Miss Giannetti, please no more, of course.
Of course, Your Honor. With regard.
Did you see that? How the judge laughs at him because he has such muscle memory. And this leads me into a little bit of a discussion about defense attorneys. Defense attorneys, you know, they defendants deserve a rigorous defense, right? All defendants deserve a rigorous defense. Karen Reed deserves a rigorous defense, right? Chad Daybell deserves a rigorous defense, or they at least have the right to it. You know, maybe whether they deserve it is a matter of opinion, but they have the right to it. And so what happens sometimes is defense attorneys get into these patterns and these rhythms where there's muscle memory. And so, for instance, we see, you know, Pryor and his muscle memory and his pattern is to use the old, you know, okay, okay.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, okay, right? Okay, right? Okay, right? Right? Okay, okay, okay.
And, you know, we also saw this happen with Rocket Man, whose muscle memory, she's always taking a defensive stance, right? Regardless of whether she's on the offense, Rocket Man's always taking a defensive stance. And her muscle memory response is perfect.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much for that clarification. Perfect. Thank you so much for that clarification. Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Perfect. Perfect. Of course. Of course. So then we've got this defense attorney whose muscle memory is of course. Of course. Let's see that again.
Katie McLaughlin is in that photo, correct?
Yes, along with a bunch of other friends.
Of course, there are other friends, but you.
Miss Giannetti, please no more, of course.
Of course, Your Honor. With regard.
So even after he's told by the judge, no more, of course, Mr. Giannetti, he's like, of course. It's just funny, you know. And you know, it also kind of like to widen out that conversation. That's what defense attorneys do. That's what defense attorneys do. It's their job to kind of put a witness on the stand, or at least in their cross-examination of a witness who could be damning to them for their client, is to make all of their all of that witness's actions and motivations look bad. Friends don't let friends see Rocket Man. I call her Rocket Man. Now, I didn't watch any of the boyfriend testimony. I went back to Daybell stuff, and I missed the rest of the Karen Reed trial. We watched together. We watched the full testimony of, I forget her first name. I think it's Lisa. Is it Nagel? Nagel was her last name. And I think it was Lisa. Nagel is the one who apparently texted her brother or boyfriend saying that she saw a blob on the lawn as they were leaving. And that's the text in question that was screenshotted and sent to Jen McCabe. You know, so if all of that is true, that is very, very interesting. You know, what I'm seeing on here, Chopper, is that it's basically the YouTube creators versus everyone else. There's a group of YouTube creators who have just decided that Karen is innocent, and they've not only decided, they've taken it up as a mantle, as a movement. And they've gone really far. They've gone so far into that like I might lose subscribers just by saying I don't know whether she's innocent or guilty. Do you understand how weird and divisive that is? Yes, while we're on a break, you can ask. It depends on what advice you're asking for, Solo Sock. It depends. I don't want to just give a blank check because it depends on the topic. Go ahead and ask the advice, and then we will. But it really bothers me that it's not, it becomes almost like a Democrats versus Republicans fight to the end, like a bloodbath. If you don't choose one side or the other and fight. We are supposed to be people who believe innocent until proven guilty, but also look at the facts and, are able to, should be able to share our opinions freely. Hello, Tracy. And should be able to share our opinions freely without fear of recourse. And unfortunately, that's just not the way it is. And that's, another beef I have with the algorithm. The algorithm encourages that kind of tribalism, that kind of mob mentality, the kind of bubble-like thinking where you all get into a group and then decide this is the way we're going to think and we're going to attack other people. You're going to attack other people who share, opinions that are different than yours. I don't know. Solo Sock says she owns a business. It's going under and she feels like that means she is going under. And I don't relate really well while trying to be helpful. Oh, that's a tough one but like the simplest thing I can say, Solo, is that there are a number of things I could say to this. There are a number of things I could say to this. And that is that people who start up businesses are brave people because most businesses fail. Most businesses fail. Okay. So the thing to do in that situation is not take it personally, not take it like a personal human, just a personal failure, but just to look, take a little bit of time, get away from the horrible feelings, feelings of failure. Just give it a little bit of time and then do an honest review of what happened. Just an honest, just detached, dispassionate review of what happened, what you could have done better, what you did well, what you could have done better. And then the next time, and I'll answer your questions about what Chad's up for in a moment, Tracy. And then the next time, if she decides to start another business, she now has learned. I've worked with entrepreneurs who have failed more times than they succeeded before they succeeded. Yes, agree, Chopper. Take what you learn on YouTube with a grain of salt. But also from a business perspective, I've worked with many entrepreneurs. Most of them failed multiple times in their businesses before they succeeded. And some of them never succeeded. Never. So it takes a very brave person to start a business. And it takes a strong person to recognize that the business is failing and then to move on and to go on to the next thing, whether that's getting a job and working for someone else or starting a new business and learning from the mistakes. But it's definitely not any reflection of her as a person. It doesn't mean she as a human being for all the rest of humankind was a terrible person. It was just a business that didn't work. So I hope that helps. So Tracy, Chad is being tried for the murders and conspiracy to murder Tammy Daybell, his wife, and JJ Velo and Tylee Ryan. So yes, he is being tried for 3 different murders and also conspiracy to murder. So, and that is what Lori has been convicted for already and is serving time for. So, she is now in Arizona awaiting trial for the murder of Charles Vallow, her 4th husband. Chad is her 5th husband. This trial for Chad Daybell is a death penalty trial. So he will face the death penalty. That is something that will be decided by the jury, is my understanding. If he is found guilty, there will be another phase of the trial, which is the death penalty phase, where it's determined, or where it's determined what the actual punishment will be, and they will determine whether it's death or life in prison. And the actual method of death that they use, that they've recently voted in Idaho, is pew pew squad, shooting squad. So it's possible that Chad will face a firing squad. They did have death by lethal injection there, but they recently, in the last 2 months, had a massive failure where there was a death row inmate who had been sitting on death row for something like 20 years. And I didn't know there was a pew pew squad in Oklahoma. Okay. I think there's a few states with it. So they attempted to serve the death penalty on an inmate a couple months ago, and it failed. They tried to inject him with the lethal substances 8 different times and couldn't find a proper vein. So imagine the horror and the discomfort of all the people watching that. Yeah, so that's my understanding, is that the jury will decide whether, he gets to face the death penalty or not. So also, I want to remind y'all that tomorrow I am going to, in the morning, stream the Corey Richins preliminary hearing. Corey Richins is the woman whose husband died, and then she wrote a children's book about grief and actually became famous for writing that children's book about grief. And then it turns out that she was most likely poisoning her husband with fentanyl. And not only that, but had attempted it a few different times. So I'm really interested. I'm very interested in cases where there's some sort of social media influence involved, or media influence, because I do feel that in a lot of these cases, social media has a hand to play in helping to bolster and promote and create a kind of a halo around a person who then turns out to be turns out to be a killer or a stalker or just an absolute abuser. I have not seen her reviews on Goodreads. That might be a fun read, Chopper. That might be a fun read to go through. Hold on a moment. I just want to look up and see one thing real quick. So here's a little reminder of what's at stake in the Corey Richins case and the information.
Accused of fatally poisoning her husband with fentanyl and later writing a book about grief, appearing back in court one last time Monday before a critical preliminary hearing. Wearing a red turtleneck and black blazer, Corey Richins remaining silent as the murder. Wearing a red turtleneck.
Look at the way she's looking there, right there. I watched some of this yesterday, okay? She literally did not move from that posture. Not 1 inch of her face moved from that look on her face. I don't think that entire hearing yesterday. And all I see is defiant anger. I see somebody who's angry that she even has to sit there. Yeah. Maybe Turtle Guy will save the day. She looks extremely uptight. Yeah. Isn't it, Rachel Lee? I will say this, okay? Every single time the news reported about Steve Jobs, they always talked about his black turtleneck, but it was because he wore the same outfit all the time. He had many different black turtlenecks, but he always wore the same outfit. So it was commented on a lot, and he was a man. But they usually don't comment on what men wear in court, do they? They really don't, unless it's something unusual. Yeah, that's true, Rachel. I agree. And it was unusual that a famous CEO wore the same outfit every time he was seen in public. It was kind of weird. So that's why they would talk about it. All right.
Neck and black blazer, Corey Richins remaining silent as the murder case against her enters its next phase, with prosecutors now laying out what they say is the evidence against her. In new filings, investigators saying the 34-year-old mom of 3 was financially motivated to kill her husband, Eric, that she owed more than $3 million the day he died, and that she was having an extramarital affair and wanted a divorce. The prosecution says a witness says Corey told them it would be better if Eric Richins was dead.
Wow. $3 million. She was $3 million in debt. Having an affair. Well, it looks like a lot of stuff is going to be coming out in these trials, in these hearings.
The realtor was arrested last year after first appearing on local television to promote a children's book she wrote inspired by her husband's death in 2022.
So my husband passed away unexpectedly last year.
But a month after that interview, investigators charged her with murder. According to court documents, the night her husband died, Corey told police she had made Eric a Moscow Mule that he drank in their bed. Autopsy results later finding he had 5 times the lethal amount of fentanyl in his system.
5 times the lethal dose is not accidental, Your Honor. That is someone who wants Eric dead.
His family later telling investigators Eric believed Corey may have tried to poison him more than once.
he felt like Corey was trying to kill him, and that if he did die, that she should be investigated for that.
Corey has not yet entered a formal plea, but she and her family say she is innocent.
She loved Eric. She loved her family more than anything.
Corey back in court for 2 hearings this week, a judge ruling that a divorce attorney she met with can't be forced to testify about what they discussed. Meanwhile, Corey sentenced to time served in a separate misdemeanor assault charge stemming from a confrontation she had with her husband's sister shortly after his death.
Now, Chanel, prosecutors have laid out nearly 40 pages of evidence against her, including a witness who says she tried to buy fentanyl from them. As for tomorrow, a judge will look at all the evidence and hear from witnesses to determine whether there is enough to go to trial. If that happens, at that point, Corey will enter a plea.
I love how they have that still shot behind this anchor of her just sitting there stone cold, because that's exactly how she looked the entire hearing. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of, it sounds like they have a lot of evidence against this young lady, and it'll be a very interesting trial. They're about to come back into court, so I'm going to put it back on the stream, but I'm also going to answer Amelia Sparkle's question about Elizabeth Holmes. She's a freaking fraud. She's always been a fraud. Always, 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 always. Her whole story pisses me off. She was able to, she came off as a high class person, right? She's obviously very, very
Thank you. I
smart.
think we've got our jurors pretty close to lined up, so we'll just remain standing. We could have them return to the courtroom, please.
Elizabeth Holmes is the woman who, oh my God, why am I free? She's the woman who started the medical startup Chopper with the blood startup, and then it ended and is now serving time in prison for the fraud that she committed around all of that. Yeah. Why am I? Please remind me of the name of her damn company. I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of her damn company.
All right, thank you. Please be seated.
May I, Judge?
Theranos. Thank you. Theranos.
Yes, we're back on the record on CR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. We are continuing with cross-examination of Investigator Wright. Mr. Pryor, once you have your exhibits ready, you may proceed.
Okay, and Judge, for the record, I'm asking the court to mark Defense Exhibit 7T. Exhibit 7 was previously submitted. I'm now asking as a supplement that 7T be marked and admitted. It's by stipulation of the parties as part of the Lolly Time email.
All right, has the state been able to review what 7T is?
Yes, Your Honor, it was previously provided.
Okay, so without objection, then Defense Exhibit 7T has been admitted.
And Judge, may I continue? May I continue with the Elmo?
Yes. You
Thank
can
you, Your Honor.
publish.
Getting there. Okay. So I believe we stopped off at 2315 to 2344, and I believe your testimony is that we just don't have any data as to what was going on between that time, correct?
Correct.
And then at 2344, we have the phone belonging to Alex Cox going from 175, which is Lori Vallow's apartment, correct? At 2315, it was at Lori Vallow's apartment, correct?
Yes, correct.
And we have that gap in time. And then at 2344, you get a bing or a ping at Pioneer Road 107.
Yes, correct.
Okay, is there a ending time at 107?
I don't recall now.
Okay.
I don't recall if we had just one there or if we had, I want to say there were more, but I don't recall.
That's okay. And we don't know then, other than we go down to September 9th of 2019, correct? And the first number is 242?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so we don't know where Alex Cox's phone was from 2344 to the 242. Is that fair?
It may be reflected in my report. So a lot of this was extracted from the report, and we didn't put everything in the report here. So maybe if I saw the report, I could verify if there was something
Do you
that
have your
got
report?
cut off. I don't have it here, but if I had a chance to review that, I could probably clarify if we just cut some information off here, and that's why it looks like there's something missing.
Thank you, counsel. No, just show to refresh his recollection. And this is just, officer, to refresh your recollection. When you're done, just to turn it down and just testify from your memory of what you refreshed, okay?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chopper, those crypto scammers are starting to overpopulate that top 10 FBI list.
Did you refresh?
Yes, it did help me.
Okay, go ahead.
So in the creation of this slide, there is something that got cut off here.
Okay.
So there's more than just this one data point, 2344.
Right.
There were data points until 2355 was the last one on the 7th.
Okay, and
And
let's go.
that, I'm sorry, on the 7th, on the 8th, and that was in unit 107. And then there were more data points after that in 107. There was one at 0000, and data points continued until 0044. So, and then it would pick up then after that at 242 in 175. So to clarify, from 2344 until 0044 on the 9th, we had a series of data points in 107.
So if I understand you correctly, at approximately on the 8th, we have Alex Cox's phone at Lori Vallo's apartment at 2244. That's 1044.
Yes,
And that phone is there until 11:15.
yes,
And then we don't have any information as to the whereabouts between that block of time when we don't have any data points. Is that correct?
correct.
Were you aware of who was at Lori Vallo's apartment on the 8th of September on 2019?
I was aware that, yes, that Melody Gibb had stayed the night there.
Well, that was on the 22nd.
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
correct?
I'm sorry. I'm confusing that. No,
So-
I don't know. I don't know who was there.
All right, investigator, I'd also, we can't talk at the same time. That's very difficult for the court reporters, so please try to just speak one at a time.
Okay. And then again, on the 9th at 2:42,
Yes,
and that's at 175.
yes. So but the range of time that I had data points at 107 was from 2344 to 11:44 p.m. to 0044 or 12:44 a.m. on the 9th. So there were data points that aren't reflected on this slide for a 1 hour period. And then there are no data points from 0044 until the first data point is at 242 back at Lori's.
Right, and the reason I'm pointing this out is when I went through the data points, I noticed the gap. And there wasn't, at least from your report, there didn't seem to be an explanation for about 0044 until.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's testifying. Move to strike.
Sustained.
So from 0044 to 20 or 0242, we don't have any data points at that point. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And that was fairly common, particularly at night.
Okay. And then we have data points at apartment 175 at, that would be 2:42 in the morning on September 9th. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then again, you put another 2:42. Is there duplication or is it just have some relevance?
There was a second data point also within that same minute.
Okay. And then again, there was a data point at 3:37 on the 9th of September as well, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And do we have any other data points showing that that phone was anywhere else other than 175 from 242 to 337?
Not with any level of precision. Now, there is the possibility there was cellular data.
Okay.
And I may have not really put those into my my report because the margin of error was just so great. It wouldn't necessarily show it was at one unit or the other. However, if I saw something that made me think that it had left that part of town and hit other cell towers, I would have reflected that.
Okay.
So it's possible there were other data points, just not very precise ones.
Okay. And then we have the last data point and the 175 again, and I keep reiterating this, but there's obviously a reason. The 175 is Lori Vallow's apartment, correct?
That's correct.
So if I reiterate that the 242, the 242, and the 337, all of those data points show Alex Cox's phone at Lori Vallow's apartment on the morning of September 9th during that time frame. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then we go down to the bottom line and we're showing, and I'll read these out loud just to. We're showing a 437, a 439, a 441, 514, 647. I am going really fast. I'm going to start all over again. I apologize. I keep forgetting you're there. 437.
I keep forgetting you're there.
439. 441. 514. 647, 849 at Pioneer Road 107. Is that correct?
Yes,
And that's Alex Cox's apartment. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Sometimes I wonder if some of these defense lawyers even know they're saying these reflexive things that they say.
Eventually, I'm going to get the hang of this. Maybe. So then we have on September 9th, we have Alex Cox's phone leaving or at 565 Pioneer Road 107 at approximately 9 o'clock, correct?
Yes.
That's not a precise time though, is that?
No, I would have to look at the individual data points, but that is my best guess to within a minute of when it appears to have left that, and we start seeing additional data points that are moving from that site until it goes to Chad Daybell's residence. There would have been more data points between then.
And at that point, you have the arrival at Chad's residence at approximately 9:15. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you say 9:15 to 11:45.
Yes.
Do you have any information that would suggest that Alex Cox left that area at any time between 9:15 and 11:45?
I do not. I think as I talked about earlier, there are these 4 data points specifically that seem to put the device there. There's also additional less precise data points that show it hitting towers in that area. So no indication it went further away than it could not hit those towers anymore. But I cannot say that it is at the Daybell residence entirely from 9:15 to 11:45 throughout that entire time.
I'm sorry, and
I cannot say that it's there throughout that entire time
Okay,
because there's rather large gaps here in time between the specific data points, more than an hour on one of them.
hour and 17 minutes, right?
This particular
And we'll get to
witness,
that. So you
Kennedy,
have,
is very lulling.
data point. Data point. You say data, she says data, so
know.
you're messing me up. 921, you have it within a 6-meter radius behind the Daybell residence. Is that correct?
Yes.
And 6-meter residence, that's what, 20 feet?
Yeah, about 20 feet, I would think.
And then at 922, a minute later, you have it at the gate on the northwest corner.
Yes.
Rachel, the foot that was
And,
found is a
if you could
woman in
get the red
Australia.
marker and show me where you're talking about this gate. Okay,
This upper left corner, there is a gate onto the property. At least it was, I observed when I was at the residence.
Okay.
And the data point is by that in that upper corner. And that's the data point at 922.
and while we've got this up, there's a gate and you suggested that there'd be a way to drive along there's no road there, right? It's a pasture.
No, I seem to recall there being even like some tire tracks or something like vehicles do occasionally get onto the property from that point, but I recall there being at least portion of this edge of the property being fenced as well as the border of the property being fenced. It's possible somebody could get a vehicle on the property, maybe here. I don't recall exactly. I think
So
there was a
which one?
gate there.
Go ahead. I didn't think I did. There's a long driveway behind the residence, is that right?
Yes.
And if you would put the marker from the road, not Salem Road, but 1900, where that long driveway starts, could you mark that?
Right.
This one off of
Yeah.
off of 200 North?
Right.
Yes.
And then if you go up that long driveway, there seems to be a vehicle there. Is that what I see?
Yes.
Okay, and then to the right is where Tylee's remains were found. Is that correct?
Yes, behind this structure here.
Okay. And you're not aware of anything that's stopping someone from driving down that driveway, are you?
I am not, no.
Okay. But up in the northwest corner, there's the need, and if you could go back up to the northwest corner,
Here?
yeah, and this is, you would, what you recall is you saw some tire tracks, you would drive around and then you would have to drive to where the Tylee's gravesite would be. Is that correct? And if you could slowly do that with the marker, I'd appreciate that.
If you drove from here to here?
And then the distance from the driveway where that car is to where Tylee is, which one of those is the shorter distance?
This is clearly the shorter distance, but I don't know if a vehicle can get through here. I think this was fenced here when I was there. It's possible there was a way for a vehicle to drive through here. Now, I don't know if there was a need for a vehicle to get back there or not. I just know that there was a point here by a gate.
Okay. And you don't recall there being a gate right next to that car, do you?
I don't. It's possible there is something there.
That's okay.
It might have been more of a walking gate if there was. I don't know if vehicles went through that gate.
And at the time of this is on September 9th, is that correct?
Yes.
Do you have knowledge of who was living at the Daybell residence on September 9th?
To my understanding, it was Chad Daybell, Tammy Daybell, and their son Garth.
So the three of them were living at the residence, correct?
Yes.
You're not familiar with what their work schedules were, are you?
Not particularly. I was aware that that Tammy was employed at the school
Right.
and worked more or less school hours on weekdays.
Okay.
And Garth, I believe, was also employed at actually maybe 2 different locations that I was aware of.
And were you aware of Chad's habit of going to either the Salem Church or the BYU library in the mornings?
No, not particularly, or specifically what his schedule was.
Okay. What was the vehicle that Lori Vallow, Alex Cox, JJ Vallow, and Tylee Ryan drove to Yellowstone?
The one that appeared on that video was a silver or gray F-150, a Ford F-150 pickup.
Did that have a box on the back? Do you know?
I don't recall. I don't think it had like a camper shell or anything like that. I think it had an open bed. It might have had a toolbox or something.
Okay. Do you have a recollection of being involved in any chemical testing of Lori Vallow or Alex Cox's apartment?
A chemical testing? No. I know that a subsequent time, the FBI did assisted the Rexburg Police Department in additional search there, the evidence response team, and went to those 2 apartments in an effort to possibly see if there was potential crime scene there.
And when you say that, you're talking about like a luminol substance that was applied?
Exactly. And I know there were some swabs taken of staining and different things around the apartment, things that were just unknown substances.
Right.
And or that possibly have some reaction. And now that evidence would have gone with the Rexburg Police Department for any follow-up testing, the result of any such testing. I don't know.
You don't know what the results were?
No.
Okay. And again, if you could just recite to me the distance and for someone my age, feet is better than
Okay.
meters or anything like that.
I don't know if I
do
can
that.
convert them as best I can.
Well, I will tell you from a million years ago in sports, and I understand what a meter or what a meter is. It's about 3 feet.
Yeah,
That
just a little.
helps you.
Yeah, just a little more than 3 feet.
At least it was 40 some years ago.
So the meters in this case came from obviously the data we received. So to be consistent, I didn't make any conversions. I just kept what they gave us.
Okay. Again, how many times from the time Alex Cox arrived in September 1st until the middle of November, was he on the property or near the property?
I believe I testified earlier that there were 7 times that I saw from the data, 4 times in September and 3 in October.
Okay. Now, this has a stamp of 1153 UTC 6. To your knowledge, would this be adjusted to what time then?
As far as I know, this is the time that appeared on the text. So I don't know if there's additional adjustment needed as of when this was sent. That's my understanding of when it was sent.
Did you do any investigation as to determining the facts that are set forth in this particular text message?
Could you clarify that question? What?
Did you check whether anybody heard a gunshot go off that morning in the neighborhood?
During the course of the investigation, investigators did attempt to talk to neighbors about things they might have seen. I don't believe there were any reports of anything like that, but some of that canvass of neighbors happened shortly after the investigation started. Now, by the time we received this was nearly, I guess, more than 8 months later. So I'm not sure any investigation was done about somebody recalling hearing a sound 8 months later before that.
Okay. And you didn't verify about whether or not there were any other wild animals in the pet cemetery?
So during the course of digging around the property and finding human remains, there were some animal remains that were found. Now, there was a forensic anthropologist on site that told us they were not human remains. What animal they were, I don't recall what kind of animal they were.
And you did confirm that there was at least at least some sort of a pet cemetery there. Is that right?
Yes, there seemed to be at least one animal near where Tylee's remains were found, if I recall, but I don't recall if it was a cat or a dog, or if we could tell, or something else.
And to your knowledge, did you go back and review any of Tammy Daybell's correspondence regarding wild animals or any sort of issues they had with wild animals?
Correspondence like within her phone or elsewhere?
Facebook account?
I did not. I know that the analyst that reviewed her correspondence within that device. I don't know if there were other references to animals on the property.
Now we move on to Sunday, September 22nd. Is that right?
Yes.
And we're starting at, and obviously this isn't all inclusive. You're starting at about 4:26. Is that right?
Yes, this does not include the complete day. It includes just that afternoon
Okay.
and evening.
Okay. And then you have at 4:26 to about 5:08, you have Alex Cox's phone at apartment 175.
Yes.
And then at 1 minute later, for about 2 minutes, Alex Cox's phone is at 107.
Yes.
And then the minute after that, Alex Cox's phone is at 175 from 5:12 until what looks to be about 6:45, if my math is correct.
Yes.
Okay. Now on September 22nd, do you have a recollection of who was staying or was at Lori Vallow's apartment on September 22nd?
Yes, I'm aware Melanie Gibb had stayed the night that night.
What about David Warwick?
Yes, he as well.
And obviously, JJ Vallow was there, correct?
Yes. At least that was reported by them.
And Alex Cox was there as well, at least we're going to get through the rest of it, but at least part of the time, correct?
Yes.
And Lori Vallow was there on the 22nd of September as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you don't have any information, GPS, phone, or otherwise, to suggest from 4:26 on the 22nd until Monday morning that anybody else was on that property at that time, correct?
on the property at 107 or 175?
75 or 107.
I do not have any other information other than what I review here.
Okay. And then at 1846 to 2003, which would be 6:46 to 8:03 at night, Alex Cox's phone is back at 107. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay. And then at 2004 to 2009, it's back at 175. Is that right?
correct.
Okay. And then 2011 to 2356, it's back at 107, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So 2004, that's what, 8 o'clock?
Yes, that'd be 8:04,
And 2356 would be what?
11:56.
Okay.
And I just broke out each individual day in my report. So the final data point of September 22nd is the one at 2356 within Unit 107. Starting on September 23rd, the next data point that is at 12:11 a.m. or 00:11, and it's also in 107.
Okay.
So no information based on what I reviewed to show it moved, but there's a gap there, which was fairly typical.
If you could just bear with me. And Judge, I submitted a 7T and I don't see that here.
We're bringing that up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it may have been on 7. I misunderstood. And if I could just have one moment, Your Honor, please.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I agree, Rachel. Today is long and drawn out. It's, one of the sacrifices we have to make for these trials is getting through some
Now,
more technical testimony.
you have Alex Cox's phone at Lori Vallow's location at 2009. Is that correct?
Correct.
And again, that's 809.
Yes.
And then you have Alex Cox exclusively at Alex Cox's phone, exclusively at his apartment from 2011 till 2356, correct?
Yes, and then on to the next day. So I don't have it going back to 175 the rest of that night or early the next morning.
Okay.
High truth matters.
And then you, did you look into any correspondence between Lori Vallow, Melanie Gibb, David Warwick during this time period of September 22nd and 23rd?
I did not, but other investigators possibly did.
Was that taken into consideration as part of your review of the evidence in this case?
Yes, we were considering all the evidence. I'm not necessarily in possession of all the evidence or what other investigators did.
Judge, at this point, I'd like to publish Exhibit 7T by way of the HDMI, if I could, Judge.
You may.
Honestly, truth matters. That's a good question. I would say they're probably about a little more than halfway.
I don't know
through
if you
the
can
trial.
see that or not.
Um,
And the blue highlighted is, can you read what the blue?
So I would say probably there's going to be at least 2 more weeks of this trial before it gets to the verdict and the penalty phase. That's my guess. But what I usually do is listen for the judge will usually ask the lawyers for updates at some point during the trial. They'll say, "Hey, well, how many witnesses do you have left? What's your timing?" A lot of times they'll run faster than they think, and they are running faster on this trial than they thought. But they still have lots to get through. And then we have the defense, right? So that's why I'm saying 2 weeks before they get to the point where there's an actual the jury going out in the verdict. But we'll know a little bit more when the judge inquires about it. Unfortunately, it's hard for us to know unless they say so during the trial, because they have sealed all of the witness lists and all that type of stuff. So we don't get to see what's on the slate. So
Sorrow in his heart.
And keep going.
He felt something big was going to happen. He saw something with 2 slashes in the side of the mountain, and something about people, and his heart was very heavy, and sharp pain in his stomach and pain in his legs, and he started crying.
Okay, keep going.
He can't remember what was going on or what he saw. It was going to happen now or soon. Please call is when you can. Maybe you can help him understand it. Whatever it was, this is immediate. There was nothing he could do, and it was a horrible feeling. He can't get to these people, and there was nothing he could do for them.
He can't get to these people and there's nothing he could do for them, correct?
Yes,
And that's Melanie Gibb writing to Lori Vallow, is that right?
I am not sure
Okay.
who's speaking here to whom.
And then there was to the left, back to the blue at 4:37, there was a phone call from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell, is that right? If you don't
Again,
know, say you don't know.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to counsel testifying. In addition, I think the exhibit speaks for itself, and I don't even see the information being referenced as
Judge,
far
I'm
as a
gonna move
call.
on. I'm gonna move on, Judge.
I'll sustain the objection. Go ahead and move on.
Thank you. And Judge, we can unpublish this HDMI at this point. And I'll give this back to the bailiff if I could. Now, get Elmo back up.
All right. You can publish on the Elmo. We'll
Thank you,
start it.
Judge. And Judge, I don't think I'm gonna get through, but I'll get us close to 3:30. If the court wants to tell me when to stop, I'll obviously defer to the court's wisdom.
Yeah, if you want to just keep going, we'll end at 3:30.
Okay. Now, officer. Oh my gosh, called you officer. Mr. Wright, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. We have the Alex Cox phone at 175 from 2004 to 2009. Is that correct?
yes, that's correct.
And then back again from 2011 to 2356, the phone is at 107, correct?
Yes,
And then again on September 23rd from 0011 to 941, the phone is back at apartment 107. Is that correct?
yes. So there were data points really from 2011 on the 22nd until 941 on the 23rd, all at 107. So I didn't show it going to any other place during that time span.
Okay. So I guess my question is simply this, is that at 2011, which would be 8 o'clock, right?
Yes, 811.
Until almost 10 o'clock, correct? 2356?
That's 11,
That's 11, I'm sorry.
1156.
Says 11:56. The phone is at 107, which is Alex Cox's residence, correct?
Yes,
And then the rest of, there's a little bit of a gap between 2356 and 111. That's not reflected here, but on the 23rd of September, Monday, Alex Cox's phone basically from midnight until 9:41 in the morning on the 23rd of September. Is that right?
yes, correct.
Do you happen to have any information as to where JJ Vallow was that evening?
I understand there were statements made by witnesses that were at the Lori's residence that they had seen him that night.
And that Alex Cox carried JJ Vallow up to his room at 10 o'clock at night? Do you
Yeah.
recall that?
Yes, that he had put him to bed at some point.
Okay. And at that point, based on Alex Cox's phone from 2011 to 2356, unless he left his phone, it wouldn't have been during that time. Would that be fair?
Yes, I can only say what the device did.
Right. And the device was also on the 23rd from 11 minutes after 12 to 9:41 in the morning at the phone was at Alex Cox's apartment at the same time, correct?
Yes.
Then we have at 9:41, the travel to the Daybell residence, correct?
Correct.
Is there any indication or do you have any GPS evidence, phone evidence, any sort of electronic information that suggests that Chad Daybell was there on the 23rd, Monday, September 23rd, 2019?
Your question is, did I look at location information for Chad Daybell on that date and review that? Is that what you're asking?
What I'm asking is, do you have any electronic information that you reviewed of any kind that suggests that Chad Daybell was there on Monday, 23rd, 2019 at 9:41?
Yes, I reviewed no information showing his whereabouts that morning.
Okay. And then at 9:55 and 10:12, you say approximately 17 minutes, the device was near the Daybell residence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then the level of oh my gosh, I'm going to use a statistics term, embarrass myself. The deviation of the device, is that fair? The range, I guess, would be the proper term.
Yes, yes, the margin of error or the
Margin of error.
standard deviation. I think you're asking me statistical probability.
Thank
I
you.
think okay, go ahead.
You're too young to know that. And I'm too old to remember it. The standard deviation or the margin of error on the property near the garage would have been about 50 meters, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So if I do my math, the 50 meters is about 150 feet that's our give and take area, correct?
Correct.
Would you point to the near the garage when you say at 9:55 what you're talking about? Just put a red mark there if you would.
That you're talking about the data point from 9:55.
9:55 data.
It's
point, yeah.
it's kind of this one was cut up, but it was
That help?
yeah, that helps. That data point here is on the map. There, I think it's kind of covered by this number, the red pin.
And-
When I said it was by the garage, I meant this attached garage.
Okay, so the distance from that attached garage where you have the 9:55 to the barn in the back, how much distance are we talking about there?
I think the distance, I don't know the exact size of the property, but I would estimate it to be at least 100 yards.
Okay.
And so 150 feet would be half that distance.
Okay.
So this could be, I mean, that the radius could be out near that location.
Near the barn back there.
Yes,
Okay.
I believe it. It could be.
And I understand this isn't a precise science. I understand that.
Yes.
So near the Daybell, vicinity of the Daybell residence at 9:55 until 10:12, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And are you familiar with the manner in which JJ Vallow's remains were found?
Yes, I did observe them when they were found.
And they were in a, would you describe it as a shallow grave,
Yes, I would.
8 to 10 inches deep?
Yes, that sounds about right.
Okay. And then you put Alex Cox's at 9:56 near that pond, correct?
Correct.
10:02 near that
Oh,
pond.
I'm sorry. Yeah, 956 near that pond. Correct.
10:02 near the pond.
Yes, correct.
Then 10:05, again, near the front door of the house, right?
Yes, that's where the data point is, but these have a wider margin of error.
And you're anticipating my my next question, because the margin of error at 10:05 is 68 meters, correct?
Correct.
Which could also encompass the barn as well, right?
Uh, the barn or potentially even that pond as well.
Right. And then at 10:07, you say near the front house, but then the margin of error is actually 92 meters, correct?
Correct.
And again, because of the margin of error, again, at 10:05, that could also include the barn, the tool barn back there, correct?
Yes.
Or anywhere else on the property within that, well, let's say 92 times what, 3?
Yeah, or 276 feet. Yeah.
So within 276 feet from the front or whatever part of the house is where the margin of error is there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then at 10:12, we're back to the intersection of Salem and 200 North, and that's the corner where Chad Daybell's residence is, correct?
Yes.
And then at 10:22, we have Alex Cox's phone back at his, oh, excuse me, we have Alex Cox's phone back at 175 for what looks to be approximately 52 minutes. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's at Lori Vallow's apartment?
Correct.
Okay. Judge, this might be a good time right now. I can go 2 more minutes, but it would be,
No, if this is a good breaking point, we can go ahead
may I?
and conclude
Thank you.
for the day. All right, we will continue on then with this cross-examination tomorrow morning. We are going to go ahead and break for the afternoon. As I mentioned, I'll briefly discuss with council some administrative issues once, and we'll discuss that off the record. So that'll go ahead and conclude for today, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Thank you for your attentiveness today and for following the court's continued instruction as you leave to go home this evening. Please continue to follow that instruction, not to look this case up in any way or research the case. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. If you see any media coverage of the case, please try to avoid that as much as you can, and we'll have you confirm all that in the declaration you'll sign in the morning when you return. We'll start again with additional evidence on this cross-examination at 8:30 tomorrow. Thank you also to those in attendance in the courtroom today for complying with the court's conduct order. And with that, we'll be in recess until tomorrow.
He said they were going to have those. Yeah, they're having those administrative discussions off the record, but those administrative discussions, those are the exact kind of discussions they have that we were just talking about, where they talk about okay, counsel, how many more witnesses do you have? How much longer do you think? How long is your cross-examination going to be? Blah, 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 blah. But unfortunately, we don't get to hear that. This was one of the longer kind of grueling days. They didn't actually physically stay in court longer today than they usually do. It just felt longer because the testimony was so dry and technical, but it was still important. So it was very important to place Alex Cox in all those locations at those precise periods of time. And even though Pryor is, saying, oh, well, this margin of error puts him here, and this margin of error puts him here at this time. What we have to remember is it was that cell data information that was able that helped law enforcement pinpoint where to find Tylee and JJ's remains. That was the data they used to find the remains of Tylee and JJ. You can't take that away from any of this. It was literally Alex Cox's data. So all of the questioning and, fluffery is not going to take away the fact that Tylee and JJ were found in Chad's backyard. Their DNA was on the tools. Other people's DNA was on the tools. Alex's handprints and DNA, or at least his handprints, were found on the bags and the tape around JJ. There was a hair of Lori's, which probably got there by transference, but there's just so the evidence is overwhelming, even if some of the evidence that we have to hear is gruesome, but also, boring to get through. But I appreciate you all hanging in here with me as I go through this labor of love. I want to remind us all of why we're here. We're here because of this person, Tylee Ryan. She didn't deserve what she got. We now know that she was dismembered and burned. Her pelvis was literally chopped up to death, and hopefully, I choose to believe that she was well into heaven by the time they started doing that horrible stuff to her. But we're also here for this little boy. Well, that's Tylee and Colby there. For that little boy as well. That's why we're here. Not for these assholes. Not for these assholes. We're here for this lady who didn't deserve to die the way she died. Didn't deserve to be thrown away like trash. Didn't deserve to have her funeral, and memorial services rushed, to have her body be rushed into the grave without any sort of autopsy, to have her husband barely paying attention to the fact that it was a memorial service for her, to have all of her family be lied to. She didn't deserve any of this. None of it. None of it. That's why I'm here. And I appreciate you all hanging in here with me. And let's all also remind ourselves that even when there are long suffering days in court, there are also funny things that happen in court too. We stay here to wait for the funny things that happen in court, like this one.
I have an objection. Shut up. I have a right to object, I believe, Your Honor.
You have the right to get held in contempt of court.
Good morning, sir. What's your name?
Me?
Yeah, you. Yes.
Nathaniel Saxon, sir.
Your name's not Buttfucker 3000, you yo-ho. What kind of idiot logs into court like that?
So we wait for those kinds of moments to pop up while we sit here through, long long testimony. And sometimes they happen and sometimes they don't. But have a wonderful rest of your day. Please join me for the Corey Richins preliminary trial tomorrow and continued coverage of the Chad Daybell trial as well. Please remember to hit the thumbs up, and I'll see you soon. Bye.